Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Grayson from Based Theory here with two titans of the industry in the atheist community on YouTube debating with creationists. We have Atheist Junior and Mark Reid, and today we've got a real special treat. We're going to be reviewing one of Kent Hovind's latest videos, a supposed Bible study that quickly derails to some particle physics when Kent asked the question, what holds atoms together? And surprisingly, it's not the strong nuclear force. It's not any physics either. Well, it's Jesus, spoiler alert, but we will get there. Before, I want our guests to be able to introduce themselves. So, Mark, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Mark Reid. I wouldn't consider myself a Titan. Maybe a very I think, and plus the Titans eventually got overthrown, so I don't think that's accurate, Grayson. How dare you? No, all good, Matt. I do debate. I do some commentary. I'm a skeptical atheist. I'm a secular humanist. I love to talk about theology, morality, evolution, science, you name it. I'm there for it, and I especially enjoy debates. You can catch some debates on my channel if Grayson provides a link, probably, which would be fantastic. Thank you, sir. And it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Grayson. It's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Yeah, and then Atheist Junior, we've collabed before on your channel, but since this is your first time on my channel, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, I would absolutely consider myself a titan of YouTube, so thank you for acknowledging that.
And Mark can be an immortal of YouTube.
Okay,
he doesn't want to. He wants to go forever.
Well, the Titans were deposed, so get ready for that.
Yeah,
Mark's coming for you, AJ.
Yeah, exactly. Watch out.
Yeah, but I think you guys pretty much know what I do on my channel at this point. I like to do a lot of live stream content, responding to mostly Kent Hovind videos, but I also dabble in a little bit of debating on with other creationists or on Discord, and I've done some interviews with other atheists. Mark Reid's interviewed me. We've done a couple collabs together. We've teamed up, done team debates. I did a team debate with Snake was Right as well. And yeah, I love doing YouTube, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, speak of the devil, and by that I mean Kent Hovind. Let's go ahead and let Kent introduce the topic for tonight's video and just see how quickly this derails.
Here in the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama, January 15th, 2023. We'll be in the book of Colossians in just a minute. What holds the atom together?
Okay, so just in the first
atom?
15 seconds, he already he can't hold it in anymore. He's got to just blurt out what holds the atom together. He desperately wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, it's indicative of these kind of creationists. They never want to talk about God and debate God. They always want to debate evolution and what holds atoms together and how do we know where the universe came from. You know, it's always science to them. They don't put God in the same sort of, skepticism that they do science, And sort of on that, Kent's an abject coward. He will not debate on God, which is strange for a pastor. It's sort of, he only wants to debate evolution, which is weird.
Nominally supposed to be a Bible study, right?
Right.
My understanding is that these videos are supposed to be him going through the Bible chapter by chapter, and this is supposed to be the part of Colossians 1. And instead, he wants to totally talk about a different subject. He wants to talk about atoms.
Well, I could be wrong. I'm not sure the atoms are mentioned in Colossians 1.
I was just going to say that.
No, they're not at all. We'll see what he does in his actual slideshow, and the transition is so jarring. It's like if you thought this was a jarring transition, when he actually goes to the actual slides that he prepared in his presentation, it's just it's so hilarious.
Right.
Here, we'll let him go on.
I like how he's got his subscriber count circled there. Just so you,
he wants
so you
don't miss it. I didn't remember the timestamp here, but there is a part of this video for any of the audience who's brave enough to actually watch the full thing in its entirety. There's a part where he jokes about how he is sinless. He is without sin.
He says he's perfect.
It's like, I know it's supposed to be a joke, but I mean, just the bounds of his ego. But we're going to be getting into a lot of scientific conversations, and I just want to make it clear, this is the guy that says that he loves science. He calls himself Kent the Science Gent. He says he taught science for 15 years. And in the course of this video, he's going to be trying to debunk some of the basics of particle physics, like things that we know for a fact, like the strong nuclear force that we observe in particle accelerators. And he's going to try to be just tossing all that aside and say it's actually all just Jesus.
Yeah, well, for somebody who supposedly taught, he says he taught physical science. I don't know if that's supposed to mean physics for 15
That's not
years.
physics. No, he did
It was
not
at some
teach
sort of private like school. It was like kind of like an after school for church, you know, and he's teaching science and math, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
This is a guy who claims to have an IQ of 165.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have heard him say that, but he says his IQ is 165.
Yeah, that's with Einstein level IQ.
Yeah, so he's going to be using that Einstein level brain of his to debunk particle physics in this 20-minute video. So are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Watch out, particle physics.
Well, let's go. You ever think about that? People don't think about it. Atoms, the proteins, the proton in the middle is positive particles. Shouldn't they repel each other, except in San Francisco? Come on now.
And he just can't help himself. He's got to get it big in on the gays.
Homophobia already, yeah.
I just want to say this is by erasure, because there are people in San Francisco who are bi, and they are attracted to both opposites and the people who are not opposite.
Look, Kent's never let the truth come in between him and a racist joke. You know, that he's never, you know, let stuff like facts come in between him and making some racist remark. So why would he pay any attention to that whatsoever?
So despite that intro where you could tell he's just chomping at the bit, he wants to get into the atoms thing. He's got to go by his PowerPoint. And in his PowerPoint, I mean, we're skipping over a lot of stuff because it's honestly dreadfully boring. He says the name Paul at least 150 times. I mean, he's just going through and he's just reading his Bible and his PowerPoints on his slides, and it's like, yeah, we get it. But there's one point I wanted to highlight here. And then Mark, you can say something real quick. But I just wanted to highlight one part here before he gets into the physics aspect of things. Mark, did you want to add something?
Oh, it just reminds me of that thing of magnets. How do they work? You know,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, that's basically his argument here.
Well, Kent basically is the insane clown posse of creationists.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to highlight this here because
when I think insane clown, I think Kent.
Exactly. So I wanted to highlight this here because it's going to become relevant towards the end of Kent's little diatribe about atoms. But just bear this part in mind here because it's very ominous what Kent starts bringing up when he mentions Israel.
Takes place in the Mediterranean Sea area. There's a little bitty country of Israel. Keep an eye on that one, folks. You're going to see it in the news in the next couple months, probably. It's going to explode over there. Hang on. Just keep watching, okay?
Yeah, I mean, what does Kent know? Like he's pretty dead set that something is happening in the next few months in Israel, and it's going to be explosive. I mean,
something's been happening in Israel for the last 50 years. It's not suddenly if he says there's suddenly going to be there's been something happening there for ages. It's called the Palestinians in the West Bank. Like that's been a thing for ages now. It's no prize for saying, hey, something's going to happen over there.
Well, what Kent is referencing is he thinks that there's going to be some sort of biblical prophecy fulfilled where the Jews build their temple that is a signifier of the end of days. And he's like, they're going to build it. Watch out. They're going to build that temple.
Oh, the temple, yeah.
So that's what he's talking about.
As Kent gets older and older, he seems to become more and more certain that the Armageddon, the revelations, the rapture is at hand. It's coming up closer and closer. In 2021, he posted a video where he said it was gonna happen sometime towards the end of that year. Well, it's now over a year since then, and now we have Kent saying that something is going to spark off in Israel in the next few months. And we're going to skip over a lot of the rest of this video because he's just dissecting Colossians 1. And the main like topic that he's going through in this Bible study is like basically him having an existential crisis from his old age. He talks about what it's like being 70 years old now, and he continuously berates the audience. What have you done with your life? You know, what do you have to show for your life? Like, what have you been doing? How do you spend your time? I mean, look, even his hat that he's wearing says "not enough time" with 3 exclamation marks. I mean, he seems to like, as he gets into the twilight of his life, like in his 70s, he's becoming obsessed with this idea that it's not just going to be the end of his life that's coming up. It's the end of the whole world. It's the rapture. It's the revelation.
Well, this video was recorded on Kent's 70th birthday, so I will say to happy 70th birthday, Kent. And
Yeah, happy birthday.
Kent, he has this meme about, oh, we don't have enough time. So I've been planning on, turning this meme around and saying that creationists say we need less time. We need less time because it's not right to say that because deep time actually happened. We actually know that the universe is billions of years old. So sure. Kent thinks he's making fun of people for not believing the Earth and the universe is thousands of years old, but it's the other way around. So creationists need less time.
Yeah. And so we're going to be skipping over a lot of Kent's, biblical discussions, him talking about Colossians. And what we want to highlight here is specifically his transition from the more biblical topic of Colossians, what he wanted to discuss in the Bible study, to his transition to, you think it's going to be atoms, right? You think he's going to transition to what it holds atoms together. That's what the topic he said is going to be. But you'd be wrong. And his transition is so much better than that. It literally makes me laugh every time I see it. So we're just going to play it for you right here.
The firstborn of every creature. For by him, that would be Jesus, were all things created. Wait. Bible says God created all things. Colossians says Jesus created all things. Guess what? That's one of a couple hundred verses that shows Jesus was God in the flesh. God decided to take on a body. He can do that if he wants. Come down, live here for 30-some years, let them kill him, and rise from the dead to pay for my sin. Wow. I'll take it. By him are all things created that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible. Are there things that are invisible? Oh.
Okay, so there's the start. Are there things that are invisible?
Hang on to your seats. What about this atom, anyway? Whether they be...
He is so excited. He wants to talk about the atom. Did you hear that little...
Got him. I got him now.
Listen to that one more time.
These scientists are screwed.
What about that atom?
Oh, hang on to your seats. What about this atom, anyway? Whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things. By him, all things consist. What is this? Consist means to stand together, to hold together. By him, everything holds together. In him, all things consist. What is gravity and how does it...
Okay. So that's his transition. He literally goes from the Bible verse to the definition of the word consist to then he just has a slide that says, what is gravity? Like, what is going on here?
Is he trying to say that because the Bible uses the word consist, which I might add is a translation of probably a much different older word that doesn't mean the same thing he's trying to say, does that mean that gravity is God, or God is causing gravity?
Well,
this is such a non sequitur.
I think with the idea of consist is he's saying because like God is like all things consist because of God and Jesus. He's saying that that's what holds atoms together. But instead of having the next slide be about what holds atoms together or anything about atoms, his next slide is just what is gravity? And it's a little like screenshot from an article in 2001 by science guys about what gravity is. It's like,
so what is UU anyway? What university is that? I mean, I presume it's a university, state university, because it's .edu.
University of Utah?
That's what I would
University
guess,
of
but
Utah?
I haven't read this specific site. It says like department/physics/science guys.
Right, right.
It definitely sounds outdated from the text
Yeah,
he reads.
2001.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, it's just like, what is gravity and how does it work? How does that have anything to do with what Kent was talking about at all? He's talking about what holds atoms together. But we'll let Kent talk about gravity here. Hold on to your seatbelts.
Work. Maybe you never thought about that. I've been using gravity all my life. What is it? Give me a jar of it, please. Paint it red. How much does a gallon of gravity weigh?
like seriously, does anyone know what he's trying to get at with these questions?
Well, that's like saying, like, give me a jar of inertia. How much does inertia weigh? Right? It's a phenomenon that we see, and we can explain why inertia exists and forces and, you know, kinetic force, say, but you can't give somebody a jar of kinetic force, right? There's no way you can do that. Like, it's such a misguided question. Like wanting to see a jar of inertia or a jar of kinetic force or a jar of, you know, any of these kind of forces. What are you talking about? It's nonsensical.
Well, if I gave Kent an empty jar, I mean, gravity would be affecting the jar and the air within it. So that would, I think, technically be giving him a jar of gravity, and I could paint it red if you want.
Oh, you think he would accept that?
No.
Of course not. It's like basically like if a force is just something that changes an object's inertia, then like, you know, you could say, okay, Kent, do you think punches and kicks are real? Can you put a punch or a kick in a jar? Can you paint a punch or a kick red? Like, no, like obviously not. I mean, it's just it's a weird thing. Like he's listing these criteria of like, okay, if you can't put something in a jar, if you cannot paint it red, then that means it doesn't exist. Because he's trying to say that somehow being able to put something in a jar and paint it is a criteria for it existing and being real.
Well, I've got one for Kent the Coward. Can you put God in a jar? Can you paint God red?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
Why aren't you applying the same standard to your God as you are to these forces that we can actually demonstrate? Where's your red painted God, Ken? Where is that? Where can you put Jesus in a jar?
Where is
you
it
paint Jesus red?
Let's see what else Ken wants to put in jars here.
Oh.
You ever stop think about this? Is an invisible force, isn't it? Called the force of gravity. I can tell you what it does on Earth, how it attracts you at 32 feet per second, or 9.8 meters per second. On different planets, it's different amounts, but that didn't tell me what it is. Calling it's a force. Oh, stop. What is it? What's a force? I know. Show it to me.
It's not a force.
Nobody knows for sure what gravity is. Imagine 2 or more extra dimensions of space curled up into regions too small for us to directly sense. Wow, this is the physics department. Imagine a chunk of gravity.
Yeah, I have no idea what this is that he's reading from right now. I mean, imagine a chunk of gravity. Imagine spatial dimensions. I mean, it sounds like he's like talking about string theory.
Yeah, well, this is a long time before LIGO and before we detected gravitational waves. I mean, this is really outdated. And it does mention string theory, but I mean,
well, this is over 20 years old.
Yeah,
this is over 2 decades old. So you've got to wonder why he's going to such old research.
Well, I think he just hasn't updated his PowerPoint since 2001.
Or he's looking for stuff that he can pick at. He's cherry-picked stuff that he can say, hey, look at this. It makes no sense to me. You know, well, yeah, you're reading something that's 20 years old.
Yeah, so I guess then he's either dishonest or lazy. Those are the 2 options that we've got.
They're not mutually exclusive. He could be
Good
both.
Point.
Let's face it.
The thing I found odd about this is that it mentions 2 or more extra dimensions of space, 5 dimensions of space, but modern string theory talks about 10 compactified dimensions of space-time.
Well, that does say 5 plus.
Oh,
so they're basically saying, hey, there's at least 5 and there may be more kind of thing, which I think was around this time what sort of strings theory said, that two or more extra dimensions than the three we're aware of are sort of curled up.
Okay. I see.
Right.
Okay.
I also just would
Yep.
want to point out, because eventually where he's going with this is saying that because we don't know what gravity is, right? We don't have a quantum theory of gravity. He's going to try to say that that means that we don't know what any of the forces are. Like, we don't know what the strong force is because we don't know what gravity is. And it's like, no, Kent, we have a quantum description of the strong force. It's
Right.
quantum chromodynamics. Like, just because we don't have a quantum theory of gravity doesn't mean that we don't know what any forces are.
Yeah,
Right.
Kent seems to not know what a force is, but it's just a vector that's applied in a direction. But it's like,
Yeah,
well,
and with the
giving me a
chunks of
name.
gravity, I think where he's trying to go with is talking about gravitons and like quantized packets of gravity, which again, we don't have a theory to describe, but we do have theories to describe quantized packets of other forces, like the strong force. So we have descriptions of those things, and he just wants to say, because we don't have a description for gravity, therefore we don't have a description for any of them, which, like, we've had those descriptions for 50 years or more now.
Look, Grayson, it's the strong biblical force. That's what holds the atoms together.
Strong biblical force, yeah.
As a vibrating string. I'm sorry, you lost me. I can't imagine that. A chunk of gravity is a vibrating string that wanders through all 5 dimensions of space.
See, he's just reading like strings theory speculation from 20 years ago incredulously, and he's trying to like make it sound as if he's making some kind of argument, but he's just reading like an old article incredulously. That's all he's doing.
Yes, that is Kent's bread and butter, is the argument from personal incredulity. He does the same with evolution. He does the same with the Big Bang. The way that he strawmans their arguments to make them seem more incredulous, that's his bread and butter. It's all that Kent has. He's saying, oh, you believe that this happened, and basically pretends like, oh, I'm it's impossible for that to happen because I'm, incredulous that it happened. No, Kent, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Imagine space itself twisting and curving near a black hole. This is the amazing world of gravitation research. What did he just say? Imagine.
Well, you never studied like physics, Kent, much less quantum physics or string theory or M theory or any other sort of theoretical physics. Like, why would you understand exactly how this works?
Well, and at this part at the end, now he's not even talking about string theory, and he starts talking about like general relativity, like one of the most supported theories in all of science. Like, he's just like talking about the curving of space-time near a massive object like a black hole. Like, that's not even debatable science at that point, and he's still reading it incredulously.
Yeah, I feel like that's not really that hard to understand what they're talking about. Like, the subject is really complicated, but just the concept of, and I don't know why it says space curving and not space-time, but we understand that space-time curves around massive objects and black holes because we see gravitational lensing. We can see the way the light bends. And it's not that hard to understand what they're talking about.
And what's the alternative? Well, God creates gravity. And then all of our gravitational research stops there. Like, where do we go from there? How does science progress looking into why gravity behaves in the way it does and what actually causes it? Like, Kent is he is a pusher of absolute ignorance because he wants to just say, God, walk away, and we never get to investigate anything about it because, it's God, it's outside of science. He is a paragon of ignorance, and this is what he pushes to everybody. Don't investigate, don't look at it. It's God, just be happy with it because it's God. Complete ignorance.
And remember, this is Kent the science gent, self-described. Right. He says he loves science, and already, like he wanted to talk about what holds the atom together, but he just includes a slide that just says, like gravity, that there's no explanation for that. That's not a thing. Like, he's just trying to debunk general relativity. Like, what scientific theory does Kent actually accept? Like, it seems like every time he says, no, I actually love science. And then you ask, oh, okay, so general relativity, he doesn't accept that. Evolution, he doesn't
Right.
accept that. The Big Bang, he doesn't accept that. I mean, like, now he's going to get to the strong nuclear force and particle physics. He doesn't accept that. Like, what part of science does Kent accept?
Well,
So Kent only accepts science he understands, and because he is notoriously stupid, he doesn't understand a lot of science. So, he sort of dismisses anything that he doesn't understand, which is kind of most of it. So, yeah. Sorry, AJ, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that Aaron Ra said in a video that Kent, he's not even interested in science, really. But it seems
Right.
like Kent doesn't, because he started talking about what holds atoms together, and then he switches to gravity. It seems like Kent doesn't really understand the distinction that gravity works on massive objects and not at the atomic level. I mean, gravity is not what holds the protons within the nucleus. That's what he's really asking about, is because protons have positive charges and likes attracted to like, except in San Francisco, that what stops them from flying out of the nucleus. That's really what he's asking. But gravity doesn't affect that. I mean, maybe it does in a way that we don't understand yet, but
so he's definitely going to get to the atoms and the nucleus,
yeah.
but he's not ever going to get to why gravity is related to what he's talking about at all. He never ties those two ideas together. Like, he just talks about gravity and then he talks about the atoms. It's like,
is he trying to make it out so we don't know exactly what causes gravity, therefore we don't know what causes atoms to stay together? Is that the
he's
juxtaposition?
completely conflating them. Yeah.
Can't conflate things? No, that doesn't sound
look,
like it.
Watch how he does his transition to the strong force, because he wants to assure you, no, he actually does know about the strong force. It's kind of funny.
Imagine. Yeah. That's all you can do with it. Okay. Models of gravity began with Aristotle, about the time of Christ, who thought that the natural place for an object was down, and this described gravity. Galileo, by experiment, showed that gravity caused all objects to fall to earth at the same rate, but was unable to explain why. Isaac Newton provided us with the universal gravitational law. Newton added greatly to our understanding of how gravity works, but we still don't know why gravity works. And guess what? They still don't today. What is gravity? By the way, what holds the nucleus together of an atom?
See, there's no transition even attempted. He literally is just, oh, hey, that's the next slide.
Electrons are negatively charged and like charges repel. Except in San Francisco. The protons are positive. Why doesn't the nucleus fly apart? They've been wondering this for years. I did all the research I could do on it, and I discovered they still don't know.
We literally do know, and we have known for since the 1970s. Like, Kent was a young man when we figured this out. It's like the strong nuclear force. It's the nuclear force.
Yeah.
What holds the nucleus together? They call it the strong force. Okay.
He just contradicted himself. He just said, I did all the research and they still don't know what it is. And then he just said, oh, and they called this the strong force. Like, make up your mind. Which is it?
Yeah, so as I understand it, only works in very close proximity, and the protons will exchange quarks. I think it's mesons from memory. They sort of move back and forward between the particles and keep them locked together. And you can create that by sort of pressure and heat and things like that, like in the case of sort of fission. But, it's not like we don't understand it, Kent. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't understand it. Like, there's physicists out there who could describe it perfectly, what is going on inside, like to a subatomic level, what is going on to hold those sort of protons together. But Kent thinks if he doesn't understand it, so the ego on this man says that if he doesn't understand it, no one could possibly understand it, and like I said, he's notoriously stupid. Of course he doesn't understand.
Remember, Mark, his IQ is 165, so
Yeah, the Einstein of our time who doesn't understand basic concepts in sort of,
Yeah. Not
evolution
only
or.
would a physicist be able to explain this, but like we have like mathematical models that make predictions like based on like the more fundamental physics, like quantum chromodynamics for like the exchange of these gluons between quarks. Like we can predict what the strength of the strong force will be, and then we can test those predictions in particle accelerators, and we find that the
Right.
predictions based on models of the strong force and gluons like predict to like nth degree, like very precisely, the behaviors that we actually measure and observe in particle accelerators. So yeah, we can measure this precisely. Mark, the only thing that I was wanting to clarify was that the gluons are exchanged between quarks within the actual like protons and neutrons
Yep.
themselves. And like when you have the whole proton or neutron, overall the color charges of like the quarks kind of cancel out, so it's like color neutral. So it's only like a residual force between the different protons and neutrons. They're not actually exchanging gluons like they are within the nucleon, but it's like more of a residual force. But you're right, it drops off a lot whenever you start getting farther away. So it's really, really strong when like the two protons or a neutron and a proton or whatever are really close to each other. It's much, 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 much stronger than the like positive and positive repulsion between two protons. So like when these things are in close proximity, and we can calculate the strength of this force, it's so strong that it holds all of the protons together despite their positive charge repulsion.
Yeah, the way I understand, and I couldn't really understand this probably as well as Grayson does, but the way I understand it is basically just that it holds the constituent quarks of the protons together, and then the residual force of that is what holds the protons together with each other.
So do you guys recall, and this was probably a while ago, but I think in high school we learned this in like chemistry. Maybe you ever heard like London dispersion forces, like LDF? It's between two like molecules that are neutral overall, so they have no charge, but there's still an attractive force between them called like a London dispersion factor or force, and it's just sort of like it's a residual force. It's an electromagnetic force, but even though the total charge is neutral, they can still have moments of attraction between two neutral atoms. And it's like an analogous thing that's going on in this case between like two protons or a neutron and a proton. Like overall, they're neutral for color charge, but they can still have those moments of attraction between each other with the same strong interaction. So that's what makes it kind of residual. That's at least the analogy in like standard chemistry.
Grayson, I went to public school in Texas, so
so did I.
Well, Grayson, mine was sort of 20-something years ago, and I never did chemistry or physics or any of those subjects in high school.
Yeah, well, you guys both understand way more than Kent does. I was just pointing it out to like.
That's not hard, Grayson.
Yeah.
Like, all you have to do is like actually read something about it and watch some stuff. Just pick up some basic knowledge. It's not that hard.
Yeah, my point was just like the force that holds the nucleon together is well known, it's well described, it's predicted, like the measurements match our predictive models, like we have described it mathematically very well.
Calling it a force doesn't tell me exactly what it is. What force? Where did it come from? What powers the force? Where does the force get its energy? At a range of less than nuclear radius, for the distance, short distance here, it's repulsive on the scale of a little bit here. Okay. Fundamental particles and interactions. How do these particles interact? When it comes to the fundamental forces, laws of nature, we break everything down into four forces that are at the core of everything in the universe. The strong nuclear force, responsible for holding atomic nuclei and individual protons and neutrons together. Guys, giving it a name, strong nuclear force, still doesn't tell me what it is.
Like he's literally reading, here's the answer for what holds atomic nuclei together. And he said, oh, well, just because you have a name for it doesn't tell me what it is. It's like, that's what a name is.
Yeah, yes, it absolutely does, because we're talking about a force. We're talking about one that works on a nuclear scale, and it's distinct from the weak force. It's the strong one. So
yeah, but and sort of the whole idea that, hey, we've just given it a name and we don't understand anything about it is completely wrong. Like, it's not just we've labeled this a strong nuclear force and then walked off and gone, well, that's it, it's got a name, we're giving up on physics now. No, like the Large Hadron Collider is still doing experiments. We're still, and as Grayson said, it's very well documented in science, because we have been experimenting with the strong nuclear force for a long time now. Like, it's not...
Yeah, and if he wants to know exactly what it is, I would just say, like, gluons, right? It's like gluons are the excitation of the strong force field. Like, if he wants to actually say, like, what is it? Like, what is the actual thing we're talking about? The wave function, like the individual wave function for each chunk of strong nuclear force, is a gluon. And the wave function describes everything about it. Every question you could ask would be described by a transformation of the wave function. So there's Kent's answer. That's what it is. Like, it's a wave function called a gluon.
Yeah,
well, it's motivated reasoning. Sorry, go ahead, AJ.
Well, it's kind of similar to how Kent has this series about making babies, where he always asks, oh, how did this evolve? How did this evolve? And it's like the answer to every one of those questions is mutations and natural selection, for the most part, And Kent seems to think that it's other people's job to educate him for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, he uses motivated reasoning. So he's got a vested interest in us not, like, or him not knowing that we don't have an answer for these things. So we can sort of do a God of the gaps and say, hey, it was God or Jesus or whatever he wants to believe into this sort of hole that he's trying to make. The funny thing is, not only that's God of the gaps, but the hole doesn't exist. He's trying to dig a hole so he can put his God in it. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's just...
Well, if he's ever actually curious about what the strong force is, he can just watch. I know he won't, but he could just watch this video, and the three of us are clearly explaining it to him. So let's just see how much more of
he
this
doesn't want to understand.
He doesn't want to. But let's see how much more of this we can stand of him mishandling science.
Or who made it, or why. Well, it just works. Forget it. No, I'm not going to forget it. I would like to know why. Okay? The electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, for types of radioactive decay. Okay. Then gravity, the force that binds the Earth, the solar system, and stars together. Let's see. Gravity, the force by which a planet or other bodies draws objects toward the center. The force of gravity keeps all the planets in orbit around the sun. I agree. I understand it pretty well. Taught her science for years. This is telling me what gravity does. Let's see. Gravity is an invisible force. It doesn't tell me what it is, does it? Am I missing something here?
Yes.
It just tells me, it gives it a name.
So that comes from, you see the website Space Place? That is NASA's children's site. I'm not even joking. If you go to spaceplace.nasa.gov, you will get like a children's site, like cartoons.
Using the perfect site for him to teach.
Right. There's children's, it's got on the front page, this month's art challenge sections, and it's got, kids art on it kind of thing. He is literally going to a children's education site from NASA to get his information. And that is not surprising to anybody in this panel.
Yeah. And look, it says it's an invisible force. Remember, we last saw the word invisible in the Bible. So that means the Bible predicted gravity. QED, Mark.
Why? I don't understand about the inverse square law and gravity and all that stuff and gravitational attraction. Yeah.
We know that Kent does not understand about the inverse square law. Like, it's been brought up to him time after time in debates because it debunks his whole moon receding argument. But he doesn't understand how it debunks that argument because he doesn't actually understand the inverse square law for gravity.
I got it. But what is it? Who made gravity? Let's see. Newton's law of gravity. Newton assumed the existence of an attractive force between all massive bodies.
Why does it have to be a who? Yeah. Why does it have to be a who? Why can't it just be a natural property of the universe? Who made God? Let's do that. It's that is called a loaded question because you are begging the question of It has to be an entity, an agent of some sort that did this. There's nothing to suggest that it's an agent, but Hovind will do the Hovind hustle.
Require bodily contact. How does the moon and the earth, they're not touching each other, but the moon is still attracted. The moon's still pulling our water up, making a bump called the tide.
Because the space that they occupy is curved. That's literally what gravity is. The curvature of space is what allows these bodies to experience gravity. Like,
why would they have to be touching? I mean, do you have to be touching the earth in order to fall? Why would they have to be touching?
Also, I would just point out that the Nobel Prize that was awarded in physics last year in 2022 was awarded for the scientists that proved that, like, things can interact without any local variables. So things don't have to be touching in order to interact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the universe is not locally real. There are no local hidden variables that are causing things like quantum entanglement. They don't have to be in contact to interact with each other, or like to have some kind of connection.
Yeah, so spooky interactions at a distance, I think they called it.
Yeah.
But you're lying. I mean, Kent was obviously should have got that Nobel Prize. Obviously. We all agree here.
Well, he's much smarter than those quantum physicists.
They're liars.
What a
They're
clown
liars.
this guy is, like, seriously.
Yeah. One that does not require bodily contact, that acts at a distance. Wow. Let's see. BBC. All protons are positively charged and as a result repel each other. So the fact that atoms even exist points to a force able to overcome this repulsion.
Yes, the strong force.
Okay. Strong force. I know. Who made it?
He did it. He got it. Strong force. 10 points for Kent.
I am unable to overcome my repulsion of Kent Hovind.
he just got 10 points, but he's still at like negative 10,000.
It's called the strong interaction. Its origins lie in the particles lurking inside both protons and neutrons called quarks. Oh, the proton is real tiny, okay? Like real tiny. And they got stuff inside of it called a quark. Okay.
Like he's reading things that are factually accurate, and then he's just reading them incredulously and taking a sip of his mug. Like, I love science so much. Oh.
Yeah, but so the large hadron collider is where he draws the line on science. Like, that obviously doesn't count as science. What are you talking about, Ken?
Like, is he disagreeing? Does he not think this stuff is true, or does he think some of it's true? Like, does he not think? He seems to think quarks aren't a thing. He thinks protons are real. Yeah,
he obviously doesn't, because, I mean, he's going, okay, that's the same thing as when, he sort of says, hey, you think a dog came from, an amoeba or something. Okay. So obviously he thinks...
Look how incredulously he's sipping that mug. I mean, he's doing it with a lot of shade.
Yeah.
I'm amazed he's got enough time to do that, quite frankly.
These possess a weird form of charge, whimsically termed color, which glues them together inside their host particles. So the quarks are glued together. Where'd the glue come from? And also seeps out. So the glue seeps out to bind the particles together.
Okay, so he's just described it, right? He's described the residual strong force mediated by gluons. Like, he doesn't understand what he just read, but he just read the answer to his question. Let's see how he processes that information.
So they're glued together. I see. Okay, got it. The really big picture. What's this? What holds the nucleus?
Okay, so he just doesn't process that information. You see, he literally just clicks next slide, and then he just starts reading the next slides like frantically. Like there's no processing of anything he's reading going on.
Yeah. He just gave the answer. Like, he just read out the exact answer to his question. And the fact that he's blissfully unaware of it and thinks that he scored a point by going, okay, they're glued together. Metaphorically, yes. Kind of, yes, if you want to break it down, but you're talking about subatomic interactions between quarks. Like, it's just... the
together.
Strawman.
From, can't read it here. Master Organic Chemistry. All right. Physicists have identified 4 fundamental forces in nature that are responsible for all the phenomena we observe. They are gravity, which acts at a long range.
He's just repeating
And it's attractive,
himself
but
now.
it's weak.
Mm-hmm.
There's the electromagnetism responsible for behavior of electric and magnetic fields. I got it, understand that. The weak nuclear force, and then the strong nuclear force. What are they? Can you show it to me? Give me a jar of gravity. Give me a pound of this strong nuclear force. They're not telling me.
Like, we could just show him the wave function, like Schrodinger's equation, and we could say, okay, here, we can calculate everything you would want to know, like, about a gluon, right? Like, we could calculate any property that the gluon would have, and we could describe what this stuff actually is. What are the particles that are mediating this force interaction? We could describe everything about them using math. Like, if Kent actually was capable of understanding that, I don't see how he could be asking this question.
What it is. The forces vary in strength over many, many orders of magnitude, getting the extremely weak gravitational force to fit into a theory of everything. Oh, the theory of everything. Oh, that ought to be good. In particular, has been driving physicists nuts for decades.
The theory of everything is just marrying sort of quantum physics and subatomic physics with conventional physics kind of thing. It's not what he thinks it is. That's all it is, because sort of you can't apply your conventional physics at a subatomic level. It just doesn't work. You've got to use something different. So I don't know what he thinks that is.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, somehow he thinks. I really don't know. I mean, I think he kind of, in his idea, he hears theory of everything, and he thinks, oh, the scientists are trying to explain God. That's their God.
Right.
Strong nuclear force. Now, let's see. This video explains the answer to the question, what holds the nucleus together?
All right, he explains the answer to his question. There you go.
So I watched the video, and they said, you know what holds it together? The strong nuclear force.
How many times is Kent going to be told the direct answer to his question without grasping it?
It doesn't tell me what it is. Let's see. What holds an atom together? There are basically two things that hold it together, two forces.
Like, he's like asking, like, what color is the sky? And you tell him blue. And you say, blue? Blue is just a name. That doesn't tell me what it is. What is blue? Oh, Mark, you might be muted.
Sorry? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to go through this video and see. Like, they seem to be demonstrating with Legos what's going on. They're sort of explaining, sort of the strong nuclear force in terms of physics. And
Wait. The first thing that he had was a NASA for Kids website, and now he's watching a video explaining it with Legos.
Well, I mean, it's not that bad an idea, kind of thing, But just looking at the video, it's I mean, I'll get sort of a still from it. It's sort of explaining it in great detail, how it's working, kind of thing.
First of these has to do.
Yeah, so I'll just share my screen briefly. So sort of is explaining it in terms of wave function and how they're sticking together, kind of thing. So it's quite in depth. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it looks interesting.
yeah, it is actually interesting. I'll have to check it out because he's explaining it in very great detail, kind of thing, right? So he's kind of using Legos as more a demonstration thing. But the whole point is you've got 6 minutes here of him explaining in depth how it's working. And then Hovind's like, oh, well, I watched it and it just said strong nuclear force. You're a liar, Kent. It didn't just say strong nuclear force. He went through the explanation, which you didn't understand because you're an idiot.
I will second that Kent is a liar.
Yeah, I mean, what's the over-under on how much of that video Kent actually watched?
Electric charge.
Oh.
Something mentioned in the previous page. Electric charge comes in two varieties. positive and negative. Well, then that wouldn't hold the protons together.
Also, when is he going to get to what actually holds the atom together in his, like, he's repeated himself over and over and over again, like
Soon. He's almost
so
done, I
much
think.
at this point, but he hasn't actually said what he thinks holds them together, which I know is just going to be Jesus.
He's building up the suspense.
True.
Let's see. Strong interaction. On a larger scale, it is the force that binds protons and neutrons, nucleons, together to form the nucleus of an atom. On the smaller scale, less than about little bitty tiny, real small, okay? The force carried by gluons that holds quarks together.
There you go.
Yep.
Is anybody not understanding this?
It's just you, Kent. It's just you.
Well, he's motivated not to understand it. He's got a vested interest in not understanding it. That's the really dishonest thing about Kent. He doesn't want to understand it.
Yeah, true. Mark, you might have some background or like some feedback going on in the background, but I think it just got better after you just said that. So,
okay.
I think they're
behave, microphone.
Yeah, that's it. How are the protons and neutrons held together? Let's see.
He's just repeating
They're held together in the nucleus by the strong force. Oh, that explains it.
Yeah, it does.
The strong force gets its name by being the strongest attractive force. Wow. You chose a good name, guys, okay? Nuclear physics. What holds the nucleus together? The strong force. Got it, okay. How exactly does gravity work? You're quite right that the other fundamental forces of nature...
And see, he just slips effortlessly between the strong force and gravity, like without making any distinction.
Possess mediator particles. The photon for the electromagnetic force. For gravity, a graviton particle has been postulated. Has anybody ever seen a graviton particle?
Has anyone ever seen a god?
Yeah, but like if he was actually asking, like, oh, has anyone seen a gluon, like the actual subject about what holds atoms together, like the answer would be yes. We have seen gluons. We've directly observed them. But he's only going to focus on gravitons because they're just like a theoretical mathematical concept that we haven't observed because we don't have a quantum theory of gravity. Like he wants to make a claim that because we don't have a quantum theory of gravity, therefore we don't know what gluons are. Like, what?
Are you saying Kent's conflating? How dare you?
I know,
Kent,
it seems really
Kent
uncharacteristic.
The conflator. Yeah, Kent the conflating.
And even if we can't see particles in particle physics, we can study the impact from the Hadron Collider and study the effects of things. So this is just a classic straw man that you have to physically observe something with your eyeballs for it to be science, which is just it's so wrong, especially talking about the atomic level of stuff in quantum mechanics where you literally can't observe some of these things.
Yeah, we've directly observed the effects of gluons in like particle accelerators, like you're talking about. We've created quark gluon plasma, like we've like isolated this stuff. So and our observations match super closely with our actual theoretical mathematical models. So it's like pretty solid proof of these things, except for the gravity. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. But wait, gravity, we don't understand that. So how could we possibly understand anything else?
Yeah, it's true. Kent. If you don't understand quantum gravity, then all the rest of particle physics has to be wrong because Kent just loves science so much.
I know Kent's pretty dim, but he's not this stupid, like seriously, that he honestly will confuse gravitons with sort of mesons and gluons, right? He's not that stupid. So you know that he's being dishonest at this point.
Now, when you're driving along the highway and there's a tree limb hanging over the top, is gravity pulling on that tree limb?
Yes.
So are you driving through these graviton particles? Does it scratch your windshield? Does it
You're driving through curved space.
Do anything? I mean, what exactly is a graviton particle? I'd like a jar of those, please, for our science center.
That's theoretical.
You don't have a science center, Kent. You have a gift shop. There's a difference.
Graviton particle been postulated. Okay. It's included in the 5 standard string theories. Whoa. 5 standard. For the quantum field theory perspective, from the graviton arises as an excitation of the gravitational field. String theory, of course, postulates it arises in the spectrum of a closed string. Oh, has anybody ever run into one of those strings when you drive under a tree limb?
Does he think that he just disproved string theory with that? Like, I mean, what?
Do you think when they say string, they're talking about like actual pieces of string? Like, do you really think that? I don't think that he does. He will dishonestly conflate things. This
Well,
is
like
another
in string
conflation.
theory, like a photon is also like a string, like a graviton would be, and yet you can walk through like a like a ray of light, right? Like I don't know. It's just like it makes no sense what he's saying at all. Like,
Well, it's just another conflation. He's trying to say, hey, if they're strings, they have to be, pieces of woolen or plant fibers that have been wound to get, a physical string. That it's a name, Kent. It doesn't mean the same thing as when you say, you go into the store and say, hey, can I buy some string? Like, come on, seriously.
Mass certainly gives rise to a gravitational field. I agree. The more massive the object, the more gravity is. All right. I can understand how to measure it and what it does, but what is it? Is there a string between here and the moon? Is that part of it's invisible string and you can drive right through it, don't feel it? What if somebody cuts it?
Okay, yeah, you're right. He just has no idea.
Yeah.
What do you think? String theory means that there's an invisible string between here and
Right.
the moon, and that's what gravity is? Like, he's not understanding these concepts at all.
It's just a name they gave it because they sort of were trying to explain how it works, and they likened it to string. It's not the same as your physical string. It doesn't work like that. No one's wrapped a string around the moon, and that's what's causing it to stay. But it's
a metaphor. So I think it's a metaphor for the way that guitar strings vibrate. So it's an analogy for the way that these vibrations happen, but it's a totally different scale. It's just to help people sort of understand it.
Yeah, it's called a string because it's like a one-dimensional oscillation. So like a string is a one-dimensional object, like an approximately one-dimensional object. So they just call them strings because they're like oscillating like one-dimensional, like quantized pieces of energy. So like just thinking that means that there's one that's stretched between here and the moon and like that's what gravity is, like it just clearly demonstrates that he's done absolutely no reading beyond what he's quote mined in his slides.
Well, he did get one thing right where he said that massive objects, have more gravity the more massive they are. So he got that right.
Yeah, I mean, most of what's written on his slide is like accurate. It's just he's reading it incredulously. Like, I mean, like I'm surprised that he could pronounce all the words.
Okay, so what is gravity? What holds the nucleus together? What holds the world together? Let me summarize.
Okay, finally, because we've only gone over each of these questions at least 500 times, we finally get to a summary. Okay,
I'm sure we're going to get all the real answers now. All of the real answers are coming.
Okay, drum roll, please, because Kent's about to reveal all of the answers we see.
We have no idea. There's a book about it. They don't have any idea. Where these four forces come from? What exactly are they? What is it again that keeps these protons together? They're positively charged. Let's see. Colossians. He is being...
Okay, it's Colossians. Okay, because it was only explained at least 50 times to Kent. He read it himself out loud at least 10 times in this presentation. The strong nuclear force. I don't know how many times he's repeated the same answer over and over, and it has not sunk in yet. Okay, but no, Colossians is going to provide us an answer because remember, this is bringing it all back to the start when we looked up the definition for the word consist.
Before all things, by him, all things consist. That's the best I can come up with. Jesus holding it all together. Ha.
There you go, guys.
Okay, so to be equal to science and, Kent's fairy tale here, that's just a name. That's just a name. How does it keep it held together? Like,
made
you've
Jesus?
just given it a name. Yeah, like that's just a name. How does that work?
Well, he works in mysterious ways, Mark.
Right. That's the whole double standard that Kent provides. And he's a complete coward. He won't debate this with me. So Ken, if you ever see this, debate me on your God. Not evolution, not Big Bang, not any of that stuff, but debate your God. He won't do it because he's a coward. But this is the whole point. He's basically saying, hey, we've just given a name to the strong nuclear force, which isn't true. We have done tons of experiments on it, gathered tons of data on it, explained how it works. Grayson's explained how it works. Hell, you explained how it worked in here, Ken. Like, seriously. But when it comes to your explanation, you've said, Jesus, no more explanation needed.
It's a strong biblical force.
It's the strong biblical force.
Oh God, yeah, and I mean, like, just to pose this back on a question, on Kent's own question. So basically, what Kent is posing here is that God is physically keeping all of the atoms together. He's holding them all together, and he's also holding everything in gravitational orbit. Right? God is the source. He's the energy source for gravity. So then, to throw this back on Kent's own question, then, if I'm driving and I drive under a tree branch and that tree branch is being pulled by gravity down, am I driving through God?
And why doesn't God leave scratches on your windshield?
Yeah. So I think that there's a little bit more in this video where he kind of brings things back to focus on Israel. So let's see. I don't remember exactly where that is. I think it's coming up.
Okay.
That in him, that he might have all things, that in all things, he might have the preeminence. Okay, someday, Isaiah 24, the earth is utterly broken down, the earth is clean, dissolved. You know, if that force was ever broken, every atom would fly apart. Every single atom. You probably have 100 trillion cells in your body. Each cell contains 100 trillion atoms. One cell. What if they all flew apart at the same time? All the host of heaven shall be dissolved. 2 Peter, the Lord's not slack concerning his promise. Verse 10, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. It appears that when this force is broken, it makes a big bang. Ask the folks at Hiroshima or Nagasaki. They got a little bang. Wait till you...
Holy cow, I cannot believe he just went there. I mean, he's talking about one day God is going to stop holding all the atoms together, and he's going to split all these atoms up and cause a nuclear explosion that's going to make Nagasaki and Hiroshima look little. I mean, how insensitive to the victims of atomic bombs, but like, I'm floored by this entire line of logic he's employed. And he goes on a little bit more here.
You see the big ones they've got now. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved. Everything's going to be dissolved. He said, Peter writes, hey, everything's going to be dissolved. Look at it. What manner of persons ought you to be?
I think about how terrifying that is. Like, what he's trying to instruct his followers to think about is that one day God is going to like rip apart all these atoms and cause the biggest nuclear explosion that in the history of the world, that just it consumes everything that you know and love in fire. Like, think about how terrifying that is. And he's like, I mean, he's exuberant over here. He's giddy about the whole thing, and like he's just what he's describing is billions of deaths.
It's like that scene in Terminator 2 where the bombs drop at the beginning of the movie.
Right. Yeah. But does Kent count as a doomsday cult?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, I'd say so.
It really is doomsday-ish. And, you know, what I wanted to say was the fact that he lives out in the middle of nowhere in Alabama in a compound, a religious compound, is kind of scary with the stuff that he's talking about, because it sounds, well, doomsday cultish. You know, he thinks doomsday's coming. He thinks it's going to be very soon, you know, when we're in the end times kind of thing. And he's got some real fanatic people following him. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, the town of Lenox is like 40-something people, and like Kent employs a lot of them at his compound. And not only that, Mark, I don't know how familiar you are with Dinosaur Adventureland, but on this compound that he's got, right, the building that he's in right now, where he's got his whole streaming setup, is actually like, it's like a church. Like on his little compound, he's got the gift shop, his home, and a little church where he hosts these kind of like church worships where he's like a pastor, you know. But this is where he streams with his audience every night almost. He does these Whack and Atheists, or he does a debate, but like he's like doing these live streams as if he's, you know, speaking the gospel to a church following.
Yeah.
It's very cult-like behavior, and like he's just giddy over the end of the world over here, the deaths of billions of people, and he just can't wait over here. He's just, you know, he's excited for it.
In other words, what should you be doing with your life? It's all going to be dissolved. Do you know how much Howard Hughes left behind when he died?
Also, a very, very dated reference to Howard Hughes there. That's the first. That's like when he thinks of rich guy, he thinks of Howard Hughes.
All of it. All of it. So are you. So am I. That's why I'm not trying to build a kingdom on earth. I'm trying to send it on ahead.
Could have fooled me.
Looking for and hastening unto the coming.
So you're going to start asking for donations? Like, you can't take it with you. Give it to me, and
there's not enough time. Give me all your money.
We need less time.
Of God.
But this was like his topic for this entire thing, was just this like protracted existential crisis about what am I doing with my life? What have I done? What do I have to show for it? There's not enough time. I'm dying. Like this whole thing is like him trying to process that existentially.
Wherein the heavens, being on fire, shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Those nuclear bombs they've got are real tiny firecrackers compared to what's coming.
Like, how terrifying is that?
Yeah,
like, this is what he was talking about at the beginning with Israel. Like, this is what he's expecting to happen. He's expecting all of the people of Israel to be dissolved and burned in some sort of holy, righteous God nuclear explosion fire. Like, that's absolutely horrific. And like people,
and he's happy. He's so joyful about it. It's sort of.
And the thing is that most of the money that goes to Israel, right, comes from evangelical Christians like Kent that like fully like this is what they believe, and they believe that in order for Jesus to return and the rapture to happen, that Israel needs to exist as its own country, and they need to have the third temple built. It's a part of their prophecy. So they're sending all this money, and they're trying to encourage like Israel to fulfill these biblical prophecies, knowing that and believing that that leads to all of their deaths. Like that's pretty evil that they're trying to lead an entire nation of people to their deaths in nuclear fire.
Yeah.
So I guess, AJ, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to cover in here, but I think we've pretty much hit on all of the topics. He's not going to really talk about physics that much. And I mean, this is just doomsday cult here at the end. I think that we've pretty much hit all the points on this video, don't you think?
I think I saw at one point he was ranting about video games and things and what have you done for the Lord lately kind of stuff. But I think he's tending more towards that sort of bent as he gets older and older. He seems to hate anything except, you know, people doing what he calls God's work kind of thing. And I think that one of the things I wanted to say was like, okay, you've got your little imaginary friend there and you want to do all of this, you know, make-believe stuff. Go for it. I don't care. But, you know, this whole thing of, well, my thing is special. Get out of here, Kent. Like, seriously, you know, there's nothing laudable about what you're doing over there at all. He's just one of the most cringy Christians on the face of the planet. It's terrible.
Well, his matter of personal pride, like he describes in this video, the thing that he's most proud of is all of the people that he's influenced to not believe in evolution, and he thinks that this is making them like getting their souls saved for eternity by getting them to doubt evolution, and then he's bringing them closer to God, and this is what he considers to be his life's crowning work and achievement.
Yeah, he's like reflecting on all the things he's done. It's like Kent, like you've influenced people to believe a bunch of stuff that's all wrong.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's what he's most proud of. I mean, that's what he's
Yeah.
going to take to his grave.
But I think he also mentioned that he was sent for jail because he kind of pushed back against evolution, which is 100% not true.
Yeah.
That is not true, and he knows it. Like, I know that Kent knows why he went to jail.
It was tax fraud.
It was tax fraud. Well, I mean, it was tax fraud and structuring, like
Yeah.
two things. But the whole idea that he's trying to frame it as, well, I'm this messenger of the Lord that's being, imprisoned unjustly because of my message. Get out of here, Kent. That is not the reason.
Yeah,
And
he
knows
wants
it.
to play the victim card.
Right. It's that persecution complex that we see in so many of these Christians.
Exactly.
You broke the law. That's why you went to jail. It wasn't for some of your beliefs. It wasn't for any kind of religious reason. It was because of a financial reason. So it was because you were taking money to avoid taxes, and you didn't pay the taxes on your employees' salaries. That's why.
And I just want to point out, I think in those filings between like 1998 and like 2003 or something, I think like he made multi-millions of dollars from Dinosaur Adventure.
Yeah.
It's not like
when Kent Hovind got arrested, his wife had $14,000 in her bedroom in cash.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you guys wanted to cover on Colossians 1 and the strong nuclear force?
Was that Colossians 1? I didn't realize Colossians 1
Yeah.
had so much physics in it. Yeah.
The only thing that he was pulling from Colossians 1 for this entire thing, like this was supposed to be a Bible study on Colossians 1.
Yeah.
All he pulled was the word consist.
And
That's all he
invisible.
did.
How dare you? He pulled invisible as well.
Oh, yeah, you're right. What else is invisible? What else consists? It's got to be God. There's no other explanation.
Gotta be. Yeah.
Kent Hovind's dignity.
There you go. I mean, I can't think of a better way to end it than that. So, yeah,
absolutely.
I'll put the descriptions for both Atheist Junior and Mark Reid's channel down in the description. It was great having them both on. I mean, this was a topic that I've never seen Kent talk about before. I've never seen him go this deep into particle physics. So it was a lot of fun to talk about, react to, and review, and to just dissect this with some good friends. So like, share, and subscribe, everyone. Peace out. Hey, Grayson here with a little postscript that I didn't mention in the actual discussion before, but just to hammer home the point that even a high schooler could understand the things that Kent is talking about. When I was in high school, I actually started writing a story where the 4 characters, like people in the world, actually awakened to powers where they could control the force carrying particles of the 4 fundamental forces. So like the main character could control photons and everything about the electromagnetic field, like create thunder, like rewire technology, like have magnetic fields created, like there's a lot of possibilities. You could turn invisible, change the spectrums of things. It was really fun to write. But then there was like the character that could control gravity, the character that could control gluons, and the strong force that we talked about in the video, where basically, just like Kent was alluding to, they could rip apart atoms by just, stopping the strong interaction and cause these massive explosions. I mean, that character was just an absolute powerhouse with this like nuclear force and just ripping atoms apart in these huge explosions. There was the character with the weak force that could basically cause things to decay, kind of like the villain character. I mean, it was a whole thing worked out. But this was back in high school, and I understood the answers to what he's talking about what these forces are. The characters were actually controlling the gluons, or like, the weak bosons or the photons. They were controlling those actual aspects, and the character with gravity was actually controlling the bending of space-time. So these things were, at least I understood them back in high school, Kent. So you're 70 years old now. Happy birthday. You don't really have such an excuse.